Welcome, friends. I'm going to share with you a message that I received that finally made me believe that I was actually channeling. Now, the message is all about how our choices give us the power to step into who we truly are or step away from who we truly are. And keeping to the OG theme of this channel, I will then integrate this wisdom into how we make our food choices. So let's dive in. So without further ado, the message was and is, it is in free will where you can know yourself or lose yourself. My intention today is to explain my interpretation of this message after sitting with it for many months now. Please remember that you have full agency to take what you want and leave the rest. I also invite you to find your own interpretation. So let's break down the first part of the statement. It is in free will. So let's start by exploring the concept of free will. I see free will as essentially choice, your personal authority and power in the choices that you make. Right? Do you accept the job? Do you leave the relationship? Do you shower? Do you eat breakfast? Free will allows you to decide your fate, which also comes with the responsibility and consequences of those choices. Now, with all that said, free will is highly debated, and not everyone sees it the same way or at all. So to honor the power of choice, I wanted to share some common beliefs around free will. Some people believe that everything is predestined and we do not have free will. Some people believe that we have 100% free will in everything that we do. Some believe that there are predetermined events in our life, and free will determines when and how we get there. Some people believe that we have free will, but within certain parameters. Now, I've sat with and believed to some extent all of these at some point in my journey. But my personal belief at this point in time is that we do have free will, and there are certain events in our life that our soul chooses prior to incarnating based on themes that we're working on in this life. Now, this can get really confusing when you start thinking about the infinite number of timelines that we can and do exist in. So I'm not going to go there today, but I will save it for another video. So be sure to subscribe if you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole with me. We talked about free will, and this brings us to the second part of the statement. It is in free will where you can know yourself or lose yourself. So first, let me explain why it's written as your self, as two words with self being capitalized. So when you see self capitalized, not always, but often, it's intended to mean your truest self, your soul, the seer, the high self, etc. This is the you that is eternal. This is the you that is always there, always present, and sadly, often forgotten in human form. So to know yourself is essentially saying that the choices that we make can bring us closer to remembering or realizing who we are, to reconnect and to reclaim our truth. Free will can allow us to know who we truly are at a soul level. Now, that is a big statement, and I will discuss this more in just a moment. So the very last part of the statement refers to how free will can also move us deeper into, as I like to say, our humanness, right? This is losing ourself, losing our connection to who we truly are. Now, when I say humanness, though, I don't mean that as a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. And in the context of this conversation, the choices that move us away from who we truly are, and as I said, our humanness in this context, is more so about these choices reinforcing the false narratives and limiting beliefs that we are who we were conditioned to be in this life, right? Who we think we are, who we think we should be. Essentially, it can deepen one's suffering and separation from who you truly are. So to lose yourself is to be separated from your truest self. Now, if this concept is making your brain hurt, I like to think about it in terms of depression. If you've experienced depression or you know someone who has, you can very clearly see the suffering and the separation that is experienced. It's as if that person or yourself has become someone entirely different or a shell of the person they once were. I know that was true for me. In my eyes, this is a very, very similar energy around the separation from self, and I personally believe that they're very much connected. But again, that is another conversation for another day. Please also remember that these concepts might be very foreign and they might be kind of bumping up against some current belief systems. So if you're feeling any resistance and you're also kind of curious about this and it's resonating at some level, be patient with yourself as you take this in, if you choose to, right? Free will. But as always, take what you want and leave the rest. So what does this look like in real life? So let's pretend you're driving a vehicle. If you've never driven, imagine that you're a passenger in a vehicle. And imagine that you're cruising along, you're singing to your favorite song, and boom, all of a sudden someone speeds up and cuts you off. Now, for most people, including myself, the primitive survival brain kicks in, and depending on your nervous system, right, you might freeze up in fear, you might be filled with anger, ready to retaliate, you might retaliate, you might pull over, and those are just to name a few. So while our initial reaction to the situation might be fear and or anger, we can choose how to proceed after that. Now notice if any of these scenarios sound familiar. Are you so fearful that you hesitate to drive again? Do you drive after the person and cut them off or confront them? Do you stew over this person for days, weeks, months, years, thinking about what you should have done or what you should have said? Just notice if any of those sound familiar, or notice how you have maybe reacted or responded in previous times. Now let's explore why these actions might move you to lose yourself. These choices might move you to lose yourself as they are keeping one in a lower vibrational state. You can also think of vibration as frequency or energy if that resonates for you. Now with that said, staying in fear and or anger doesn't always feel like a choice. It can often feel as though you're stuck in those states no matter how hard you try to shift out of it. Not always, but sometimes this can be a result of operating through subconscious and unconscious patterning and programming. I'll explore this later in the video when we talk about food. But consciously or unconsciously, staying in the energies of fear and anger keeps one in a lower vibrational state. And this can make it harder to connect with our truest self, which is innately operating at a higher vibration. And if this isn't really kind of connecting, think about it this way. You can't connect a landline telephone to a 5G network, right? Because they're operating at different frequencies. Now you might be wondering why I said might move you to lose yourself. Perhaps your journey right now is about experiencing lower vibrational energies. Maybe allowing yourself to feel and express those feelings is part of your journey as a soul and or as a human. Personally, I definitely had to do the work to feel and express anger and confront a lot of my fears to deepen my own connection with self. I needed to move through it and continue to do as part of my own journey. Remember that this is not black and white. There is no right or wrong. Everyone's journey will be uniquely their own. So choices that keep us in these lower vibrational states, such as anger, fear, jealousy, greed, envy, shame, dominance, etc., they keep us from connecting and reclaiming who we truly are. They operate in a lower vibratory field. And this makes it harder to connect to yourself as it resides in a higher vibratory field. So we've explored choices in this hypothetical driving scenario that maintain the separation from self. So let's consider some choices to move towards knowing yourself. So imagine again that someone just cut you off. You experience fear and or anger initially. You honor those feelings and you shift your energetic expression by choosing to perhaps shift into compassion and think maybe he, she, they had an emergency and was racing to take care of it. Perhaps you believe that the person is needing to be in control and play by their own rules as part of their personal journey, and you wish them well. Maybe you see this person as your teacher in that moment, presenting you with an opportunity to make a shift into a higher vibration of love, compassion, and understanding to help you connect with self. Making a conscious decision to see this person with compassion, understanding, empathy, love, oneness can help to shift your vibratory field to a level in which your soul resides. It unites you in that person rather than separate you. And as you increase your vibration and move into a place of oneness with yourself and all that there is, you can reconnect with your truest self. Now, to be fair, it can take a lot of work to get to that point where you can consciously and comfortably shift into those higher vibrational states. Also, remember that shifting into a higher frequency doesn't necessarily mean that you stay there. I mean, it can take lifetimes to live a heart-centered existence. But with that in mind, please don't think that you have to do this all right now. Think of this as a seed being planted. Give it as much time, care, and attention needed for that seed to blossom. I'm going to shift gears a bit now as I integrate this concept of free will and knowing ourselves, or losing ourselves, into our decisions around food. So my intention is for you to eventually be able to determine if your choices are coming from a place of authenticity, programming, or a combination of the two. So let's explore the difference between an authentic choice and a choice influenced by programming. Now, I said earlier that I see free will as the choices that we make. Choices can be beneficial, harmful, and everything in between. Now, it's not for me to decide what is beneficial or harmful for you, so I will delineate the choices as being authentic or disharmonious. And as we'll learn, it's not that cut and dry in real life. An authentic choice comes from, yes, a place of authenticity. The more authentic choices you make brings you closer to reconnecting and reclaiming the self. The choice is not influenced by others' opinions, by fear, messaging, programming, conditioning, habits, patterns, etc. They are generally conscious decisions that you make for your overall well-being. Now, with that said, they might not always be what you want to do or feel like doing in the moment. However, you have a deep knowing that doing so is in your best interest, perhaps in the long term. For example, in my life, there are a lot of days where I don't want to meditate. And the days that I discern that it is in my best interest to push myself, I always feel better. And that has also helped me to build and deepen a regular meditation practice that's specific to my personal needs. I will dive deeper into this in just a moment. I'll also talk about this more in future videos because having a regular meditation practice is something that I've had to work really, really hard at to develop. And I teach and guide meditation. So if you're having a similar experience, please be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that future video. So we talked about authentic choices. A disharmonious choice is influenced to some degree by fear, messaging, programming, habits, patterns, false narratives, limiting beliefs. I can go on, but I think you get the point, friends. So it's important to note that a disharmonious choice might feel like an authentic choice. It might even feel like you're in control of that decision. However, if one is able to take a step back as an observer, you can see that the choice is actually being influenced by external factors. Some of those include, but not limited to, fear of what people might think, fear of your body changing, fear of health concerns, believing you don't deserve certain foods, and believing that you have to look and eat a certain way for people to accept you and for you to accept yourself. Once again, friend, that list goes on and on. But bringing it back to the meditation, the days that I'm resistant to meditate are often coming from a disharmonious energy. Often it's because I'm just wanting to avoid what might be present, or sometimes old stuff is resurfacing and I don't want to look at it. So with that said, some days I'm super ungrounded and my go-to meditation practices are not the best options for me. So when I can recognize when it's coming from a more disharmonious place of avoidance generally, that's when I push myself to just even sit down and try. But when I recognize authentically that I'm feeling really ungrounded and meditating might just exacerbate that, that's when I then focus on grounding practices, which can also be meditative too, right? So whether it's food, movement, meditation, this is a very individualized approach. This is also why following fad diets can be really, really harmful. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but one of the big ones is because it's a cookie cutter approach that steers people away from their inner wisdom and making authentic choices for their body, for your body. Let's explore a hypothetical real-life example as it pertains to food. Imagine that for the last 2 weeks, someone eats eggs and toasts for breakfast every single day. And every day, that person considers their options and consciously decides they want eggs and toast. They determine the amount, how to prepare it, when, where. Every decision is made based on the person's authentic needs and wants that day. Now, imagine another person has also had eggs and toast every day for the last 2 weeks. Initially, it was a conscious decision, and then at some point along the way, there wasn't a conscious choice. It became part of their routine. And it might just feel very matter of fact and just another part of their day. Please know that I am not saying that one is better than the other. And if you're new to my content, I love to live in the gray rainbow space, as I like to call it, because I worked very hard to get here. I lived many, many years living in that all or nothing mindset, a black and white thinking. And so if you are stuck there in that all or nothing thinking, that black and white mindset, friends, I'm living proof that you can find your way out. Now, you might have thought that the second example is less ideal based on the conversation and if maybe you're stuck in black and white thinking. But consider the fact that for many people, having to decide what to eat can actually quickly lead to decision paralysis, especially for my fellow neurodivergent friends out there. Consciously deciding every single step, it can be really overwhelming. And for some, having a routine of what and when to eat is very grounding and helps to ensure that they nourish themselves. So you see, this isn't about right or wrong. This is about what works for you at this point in your life. And with that said, it's important to have an awareness of our habits, programming, and patterns so that you can make conscious decisions as to whether or not it's serving you. And it's my opinion that authentic free will is truly what puts you in the driver's seat of life, friends. When in doubt, ask yourself, is this me authentically wanting, needing, choosing this? Or unconscious, subconscious, or even conscious programs, beliefs, habits making the decision for me? Spoiler alert, it might be a combination. So let's explore what this might look like in real life. Imagine you're at a restaurant. So you look at the menu and you decide, this is the meal that I want today. It feels like a conscious choice made with free will. Great, let's dig deeper. How did you decide? What layers came into play with this decision? And you can think of layers as determining factors that go into the decision, right? So certain questions you may have asked yourself. What is the healthy option? What will satisfy me? Did I exercise enough? Will this give me acid reflux? Will this make me gain weight? How hungry am I? Will I like it? What will everyone think? Will it taste good? What can I afford? Does it contain allergens? Will it agree with my stomach? Is it organic? Will I eat the whole thing? Should I ask them to box up half in advance? Will it be too spicy? Do I have my EpiPen? What is my blood glucose right now? I mean, no wonder making a decision is exhausting for so many people that struggle with food. Please also know, not everyone asks all of these questions, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are countless layers, or however you want to label it, and legitimate questions that can arise for each unique individual. Can I afford it is a very legitimate question. And many times they arise so quickly and are so conditioned into your process that there isn't even a conscious awareness that it is a deciding factor. And here's where it gets really fun, friends. The same layer will have a different energy for each person, perhaps even on a different day for the same person. For example, If you don't have any known food allergies, wondering about possible allergens is likely coming from a place of fear and or anxiety. Now, if you do have food allergies, this is an act of self-care to ask that question. And you might notice that some of the questions fall more on the disharmonious spectrum, right? They're a little bit more in the disharmonious eating or disordered eating world. Like, did I exercise enough? Will it make me gain weight? What will everyone think? And I do say spectrum because it will hold a unique charge for you. Wondering about weight gain if you're actively trying to lose weight will have a very different charge or energy if you are trying to increase your weight for your health. A boxer needing to make weight to compete will have a very different charge. An actor that's gaining weight for a role that's restricted their intake their whole career, they're gonna have a very different charge to asking that question, will this make me gain weight? Now, I wanna honor that this probably sounds overwhelming and exhausting to many of you out there. I can almost feel it coming through. So I wanna remind you that the mere act of just exploring this can give you really valuable information about yourself and yourself. And it's not necessarily about finding the answers as much as it is about the exploration within. Here are some suggestions just to keep in mind. Choices that are conscious decisions made by the authentic self generally take your needs into account. They're made with care and respect for your overall well-being. They might not be what you want in the moment, and you know that deep down it's what you need. Now, decisions made via programming, whether it's unconscious, subconscious, or conscious, they're generally rooted in some level of fear and external beliefs and perceptions. While it feels like you're in control, the programs operating are actually pulling the strings. And you might be thinking, well, Blair, what sort of programs are you talking about? And I'm so glad that you asked. Some of these include diet culture, all isms, right? Racism, ageism, colorism, ableism, sexism, all of the isms, so many more. Weight stigma, conditioning, messaging and messages that you receive or have received from your family, friends, coworkers, school, society, culture, doctors, social media, literature, media as a whole, yourself, etc. Many of these influence and play a role in eating disorders, as I like to say, disharmonious eating and negative body image, which then influence your decision making. There are also other factors to consider, such as OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, anxiety, ASD, medical conditions, religious beliefs, etc. This is why this is such an individualized approach and not necessarily something that someone can tell you, right? It's about finding the answers for yourself. And the beautiful byproduct of this is that when you take an individualized approach and go within, it also moves you away from comparing yourself to others. It allows you to be fully, in time, embrace your own uniqueness. And for my scientifically minded friends out there, you can also consider this an N of 1 research study. This is meant to shine a light of curiosity on this subject. There's no need to fix everything or anything right now. Just being able to notice and explore is enough. And I find that taking a gentle, curious approach can be extremely helpful in building internal motivation for change. And this can eventually help you to shift away from disharmonious thoughts, beliefs, mindsets, and actions, and into living an authentic life and reclaiming the self. Why I like this approach too is that it can be applied to all areas of your life. If food feels too hard or you're good with food, try it with movement or dating, boundaries, meditation, clothing, hobbies, work, social media. I recommend trying something maybe a little bit more accessible to build a sense of trust and confidence within yourself, and then begin to tackle the more complicated stuff. And lastly, just take a breath. Take a breath and remember that you don't have to do anything. Just let this all simmer and digest and just trust in the process. Until next time, friends, stay curious.